The static in the song. The static-filled recording began to play for the first time in 3 millennia. Dr. Cale Voss adjusted the frequency, his augmented hearing implants translating the ancient vibrations into something resembling music, though it felt more like architecture than sound. Each note was a pillar, each chord a cathedral of memory rising from the void. They called this the prime resonance, he whispered to the empty observation deck. His voice echoed faintly against the cold metal walls, swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. The last pure note before. Before what? His thoughts stuttered, fragmented like a broken chord. He glanced at his notes again and found the words had changed since he'd written them. The ink now read, "The garden was never meant to sing alone." Cale's fingers trembled as he reached for the playback controls, but the machine continued on its own, cycling through frequencies that no human ear should have been able to perceive. Yet his implants did more than hear. They translated, reconstructed, remembered. And with every passing second, the weight of those memories grew heavier, pressing against the fragile scaffolding of his sanity. Through the reinforced viewport, Cale watched as the nebula outside began to pulse in time with the recording. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, rhythmic, almost alive. Something massive stirred within the void, a presence that remembered how the universe used to sound. The stars themselves seemed to dim, their light folding inward, as if bowing to an unseen conductor. 200 levels below, in the restricted archives, a single page turned itself in the airlock quarantine log. The date stamp read, redacted. The signature, the conductor, the architect of echoes. Dr. Cale Voss had spent 27 years aboard Station Echo 9, cataloging fragments of the past for a future that might never come. To the Dominion, this station was nothing more than a relic, a forgotten outpost buried deep in contested space. But to Cale, it was sanctuary. Here, among the ruins of knowledge, he could lose himself in the pursuit of truth without fear of judgment or erasure. His cybernetic implants were not standard issue. They were relics salvaged from a human warship, their origins shrouded in myth. According to the Testament, these devices were designed not just to enhance perception, but to preserve memory, to ensure that even in death, the bearer would leave behind echoes of their existence. Cale often wondered if the implants were a blessing or a curse. They allowed him to hear things others could not. Whispers trapped in quantum foam, harmonics encoded in cosmic radiation, songs sung by civilizations long extinct. But they also forced him to remember everything, every note, every word, every scream, even the ones he wished he could forget. Tonight, however, the song was different. It wasn't merely a recording, it was alive, and it was rewriting him. The awakening. The pulse quickened. Outside the viewport, the nebula contracted and expanded like a heartbeat, its colors shifting from crimson to gold to an unnatural shade of violet. Cale's implants burned with feedback, sending waves of pain coursing through his skull. He staggered back, clutching the console for support, as the station's alarms blared to life. Warning, structural instability detected. Levels 200 to 250 compromised. Evacuate immediately. But Cale didn't move. He couldn't. His eyes remained fixed on the viewport, where shapes were beginning to form within the pulsating nebula. At first, they resembled shadows, dark silhouettes drifting aimlessly through the void. Then they took on definition, elongated figures clad in flowing robes, their faces obscured by masks of shimmering glass. "The choir," Cale murmured, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms. "They're real." The figures raised their arms in unison, and the station shook violently. Lights flickered, equipment sparked, and the air grew thick with ozone. Cale fell to his knees, overwhelmed by a surge of sensations, sights, sounds, emotions, all flooding into his mind at once. He saw flashes of a garden bathed in golden light, heard the laughter of children playing among the stars, felt the warmth of a sun that had long since burned out. And then he saw it, the scar. It ran across the fabric of reality itself, jagged and black, splitting the universe in two. On one side stood the Dominion, rigid and unyielding, their order imposed through force and fear. On the other side stood humanity, fractured yet unbroken, their legacy scattered like ashes across the cosmos. Cale understood now why the recording had survived. It wasn't just a piece of history, it was a weapon, a key, a map. The conductor. 200 levels below, the airlock hissed open. Inside the restricted archives, rows upon rows of data crystals glimmered faintly in the dim emergency lighting. Most were inert, their contents lost to time. But one crystal pulsed with a steady rhythm, its surface etched with symbols that predated the Silence War. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in tattered robes that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their face was hidden beneath a mask of polished obsidian, reflecting the chaotic scene unfolding above. In their hand, they held a staff carved from blackened bone, its tip glowing faintly with an inner fire. "The song has begun," the figure said, their voice low and resonant, as though spoken by many mouths at once. "And the conductor has returned." They moved silently through the aisles, stopping before a vault sealed with Dominion insignia. With a wave of their staff, the lock disintegrated, revealing a chamber filled with artifacts too dangerous to be left intact. Memory cores, neural implants, fragments of forbidden technology. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single object, a crystalline sphere containing a swirling vortex of light and shadow. "The harmonic resonance device," the figure whispered, reaching out to touch the sphere. As their fingers brushed its surface, the entire station shuddered, and the song grew louder. Above, Cale screamed as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The prime resonance wasn't just a recording, it was a call to arms, a summons. And somewhere, buried deep within the fractured chorus of the universe, someone was answering. The shattered notes. Back in the observation deck, the recording reached its climax. The notes coalesced into a single, piercing tone that shattered the viewport, sending shards of glass spiraling into the vacuum beyond. Cale shielded his face, but the damage was done. The station groaned under the strain, its structural integrity failing as the nebula enveloped it completely. Through the chaos, Cale glimpsed something horrifying. The robed figures stepping through the breach, their movements fluid and unnatural. They carried instruments unlike anything he had ever seen. Strings that hummed with energy, horns that emitted bursts of light, drums that vibrated with seismic force. And leading them was the figure from the archives, their obsidian mask gleaming in the fractured light. They raised their staff high, and the music ceased. For a moment, there was only silence, the kind of silence that preceded creation itself. Then, softly at first, the choir began to sing. Their voices intertwined, weaving a melody so profound that it transcended language. It spoke of loss and longing, of betrayal and redemption, of scars that refused to heal, of a people who had been erased but would not be forgotten. Cale felt tears streaming down his face as the truth washed over him. This wasn't just about reclaiming the past. It was about rewriting the future. The Dominion had tried to silence humanity, to bury their story beneath layers of propaganda and control. But stories like songs could not be killed. They simply waited for the right moment to rise again. The figure approached, their steps echoing hollowly against the metal floor. They stopped inches away from Cale, tilting their head as though studying him. Then, with a gesture, they extended their hand. "It is time," they said. "Will you join the chorus?" Cale hesitated. He knew what accepting meant, not just for him, but for all of humanity. Once the song began, there would be no turning back. The Dominion would fight to silence it, to erase it from existence. And yet, he looked out at the nebula, now ablaze with light. Somewhere out there, amidst the stars and the void, the lost pieces of humanity's soul were waiting to be reunited, waiting to sing once more. Taking a deep breath, Cale reached out and placed his hand in theirs. The Symphony of Scars. The moment Cale's hand touched the conductor's, the station dissolved around him, not violently, but as if it had been unwritten from existence. One moment, he stood amidst the chaos of shattering glass and pulsating nebulae. The next, he found himself in a vast, cavernous space that defied comprehension. The air was thick with sound, layers upon layers of harmonies so dense they formed physical structures. Pillars of resonant light stretched upward into infinity, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal. Between them floated fragments of broken melodies, each one glowing faintly with an inner fire. It was as though the universe itself had been dismantled and reassembled here, piece by piece, into something both beautiful and grotesque. Cale's implants burned hotter than ever before, his mind straining to process the sheer volume of sensory input. He saw flashes of memories not his own, battles fought across barren moons, children drawing pictures of stars in underground bunkers, flags planted on worlds that no longer existed. Each image carried with it a weight, a sorrow so profound it threatened to crush him where he stood. "What is this place?" he whispered, his voice swallowed by the symphony surrounding him. "The editing room," the conductor replied, their obsidian mask reflecting the fractured light. "Here, reality is rewritten. Histories are erased. Futures are composed." They gestured toward a massive structure at the center of the chamber, a colossal organ, its keys stretching endlessly in every direction. Above it hovered a quill made of blackened bone, suspended mid-air as though frozen in time. Around the instrument swirled countless sheets of paper, each one inscribed with lines of text written in languages Cale couldn't recognize but somehow understood instinctively. "These are the shattered notes," the conductor explained. "Fragments of songs never finished, stories never told, lives never lived." Cale reached out tentatively, brushing his fingers against one of the floating pages. Instantly, a vision flooded his mind. A young girl standing on the edge of a cliff, her hands stained with ink. She held a book open before her, its pages blank except for a single sentence scrawled across the top. "The children must be corrected." He recoiled, gasping for breath. What does it mean?" "It means they know we're coming," the conductor said grimly. "And they're preparing to rewrite us out of existence once again." The children's corrections. Before Cale could respond, the chamber trembled as a new presence entered the space. From the shadows emerged 6 figures clad in Dominion armor, their helmets adorned with intricate carvings resembling vines. Their weapons were unlike anything Cale had seen before, not designed to kill, but to erase. Each barrel emitted a low hum, vibrating at frequencies that seemed to unravel the very fabric of reality. At their head stood Commander Wren, her voice amplified through distorted speakers. "Dr. Voss, you have tampered with classified materials. Surrender yourself and the mimetic hazard immediately." Cale glanced at the conductor, who remained eerily calm despite the intrusion. They always say that right before the conductor could finish, the Dominion opened fire. But their weapons did not produce explosions or debris. Instead, they unleashed waves of anti-narrative energy, targeting the floating pages and scattering them into nothingness. Wherever the beams struck, the music faltered, replaced by an oppressive silence that spread like a stain. "No!" Cale shouted, lunging forward instinctively. His cybernetic implants flared with pain as he absorbed some of the residual energy, his body convulsing under the strain. Yet even as he collapsed to his knees, he felt something awaken within him, a spark of defiance born from centuries of oppression. "They can't take this from us," he cried, his voice raw with emotion. "Not again." The conductor knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Then it's time you learned your part in the chorus. The librarian's legacy. As the Dominion forces advanced, the conductor raised their staff, summoning a protective barrier of resonant light. Within its confines, Kale noticed something strange happening to his hands. They were transforming, becoming translucent like parchment. Words began to appear on his skin, written in the same ancient script he'd seen earlier in the visions. "You carry the librarian's legacy now," the conductor said softly. "His true name, his knowledge, his burden." Images flashed before Kale's eyes. The librarian's ink-stained fingers orchestrating reality, his final moments spent encoding vital information into the quantum foam. And then, most hauntingly, the memory of Jaro, 7, the clone who had sacrificed herself to ensure the message would survive. "She gave everything so you could finish what she started," the conductor continued. "Will you honor her sacrifice?" Kale clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. For years, he had hidden behind his work, content to observe history rather than shape it. But now, faced with the erasure of humanity's story, he realized there was no other choice. "I'll do it," he said firmly. "Tell me what I need to do." The conductor nodded, pointing toward the colossal organ at the center of the chamber. "The prime resonance must be restored. Play the song that binds the fractures. Rewrite the narrative before they can correct it." The first draft, summoning every ounce of strength, Kale staggered toward the organ. As he approached, the keys began to glow, responding to his presence. He placed his hands upon them hesitantly, unsure how to proceed. But then the words etched onto his skin began to pulse, guiding his movements like notes on a sheet of music. One by one, the keys lit up beneath his touch, producing chords that resonated throughout the chamber. With each note, the silence encroaching from the Dominion's weapons receded, replaced by a growing crescendo of sound. The shattered notes floating in the air began to coalesce, forming coherent melodies that wove together into a single, unified harmony. Outside the barrier, the Dominion soldiers faltered, their weapons losing power as the anti-narrative energy destabilized. Commander Rin barked orders, but her voice was drowned out by the rising tide of music. Through the haze of exertion, Kale glimpsed fragments of alternate histories unfolding around him. A version of the Silence War, where humanity won by surrendering something worse than defeat. Flags planted not as symbols of conquest, but as anchors connecting worlds to the prime singularity. Gardens growing toward the heavens, nurtured by songs sung in unison. These were the possibilities lost to time, the futures stolen by the Dominion's corrections. And now, through Kale's efforts, they were being reclaimed. But the strain was immense. Blood trickled from his ears, and his vision blurred as his body struggled to contain the overwhelming influx of energy. Still, he pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure meant the complete erasure of humanity's legacy. The final note. Just as Kale reached the climax of the composition, the barrier shattered, exposing him to the full force of the Dominion's assault. Pain surged through his body as multiple beams converged on him, threatening to unravel his very essence. Yet instead of collapsing, Kale felt a surge of strength unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The words on his skin ignited, transforming into streams of golden light that poured into the organ. The music swelled, reaching a pitch so pure it seemed to pierce the veil between realities. In that moment, Kale understood the truth. The song wasn't just a weapon, it was a declaration, a testament to humanity's resilience, their refusal to be silenced. With a final, triumphant chord, the prime resonance was restored. The editing room erupted in a cascade of light, obliterating the Dominion forces and rewriting the fabric of reality itself. When the brilliance faded, Kale found himself alone, standing amidst the ruins of Station Echo 9. In his hand, he clutched a single page bearing the librarian's true name and a warning. The children aren't drawing predictions. They're drawing instructions. High above, the nebula pulsed once more, its rhythm steady and resolute. The fractured chorus had been mended, but only temporarily. The war for history was far from over. The aftermath left Cale standing amidst the wreckage of Station Echo 9. The observation deck was now a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered glass, its surfaces etched with faint golden lines, remnants of the song he had unleashed. In his hand, he clutched a single page bearing the librarian's true name, glowing softly as though alive. It wasn't just a name, it was a key, a map, a warning, and it came with an instruction. The children aren't drawing predictions. They're drawing instructions. Cale's mind raced. What did it mean? Were the Dominion not merely erasing history, but actively shaping the future through these corrections? Above him, the nebula pulsed rhythmically, its colors shifting between amber and violet. The choir had returned to their vigil, silent yet watchful. As Cale descended deeper into the station, he discovered a spiral-shaped insignia carved into the walls, sharp enough to cut flesh. Elira Valor appeared beside him, her knife made from a spiral scarf fossil gleaming faintly. Her eyes bled black ink. "They've marked this place," she said quietly, "for the next draft." "Who?" Cale asked. "The Dominion?" She shook her head. "No, something older, something hungrier." Elira handed him another page, a fragment torn from the same book Jaro 7 had carried. This one bore a single line. "The garden must burn before it can grow anew." Cale stared at the words, his chest tightening. Whatever force had orchestrated humanity's exile and the Dominion's rise was still out there, waiting to rewrite reality once again. Guided by coordinates embedded in the librarian's name, Cale and Elira ventured deeper, eventually reaching a sealed chamber buried within Mars' oldest crater. When they breached the door, they found themselves standing on the edge of an impossible expanse, an infinite sheet of paper stretching outward in all directions. Upon its surface lay countless drawings, each rendered in childlike simplicity yet imbued with eerie precision. Stars exploded, planets unfolded, flags burned. At the center stood a figure drawn in stark white ink. The conductor, their obsidian mask reflecting the fractured cosmos around them. "This is what they see," Elira whispered. "Not what is, but what will be." Cale knelt beside one drawing, a depiction of Mercury unraveling into an endless scroll. Beneath it, scrawled in perfect cursive, were signatures. Every clone of Jaro 7, every fragment of the librarian, every voice that had sung in the fractured chorus. "They're using us," Cale realized aloud. "Every action we take, every choice we make, it's all part of their design." Elira nodded grimly. "But designs can be altered. Stories can be rewritten." Together, they began altering the drawings, smudging lines, and redrawing connections. Each change sent ripples across the infinite sheet, distorting visions of the future above them. Yet as they worked, Cale felt they were being watched. Somewhere beyond the veil, the children continued to draw, their instructions growing clearer. Finally, they reached the last drawing, Earth split down the middle by the scar. Above it floated a single word, written in letters of liquid void. "Redacted." Cale hesitated, then crossed it out entirely. In its place, he wrote, "We do not forget. We do not forgive. But we understand justice." The sheet shuddered, then went still. Around them, the infinite expanse dissolved into darkness, leaving only silence. When Cale and Elira emerged, the station was gone. In its place stood a barren asteroid field, rocks arranged in the shape of a colossal flag. The black field marked with a single white line. "The scar," Elira murmured. "It's not just a symbol. It's a promise." Cale nodded, clutching the final page tightly. The battle for history had been won, but only temporarily. The Dominion would return, stronger and more desperate than ever. And the children would continue to draw. But for now, the chorus remained unbroken. The flag still flew. The silence was only the beginning. Subscribe now for the next chapter in Chronicles of the Lost, where the scars of history become the weapons of tomorrow. Watch the full playlist to uncover all hidden connections. The chorus isn't finished. The flag still flies.